Sarah Chen had always been different from her classmates at the Terra Nova Military Academy. While they complained about the rigorous training exercises and dreamed of comfortable civilian lives, she pushed herself harder than anyone else. Her lean frame carried scars from countless sparring sessions, and her dark eyes held a determination that made even the instructors uncomfortable. The academy floated in the void between Earth and Mars, a massive structure of gleaming metal and reinforced glass that housed the brightest military minds of humanity's expanding civilization. Students from across the solar system came here to learn the art of warfare, diplomacy, and leadership. Most came from privilege, their paths paved by family connections and inherited wealth. Sarah came from the mining colonies of Ceres, where survival meant working 18-hour shifts in asteroid tunnels before she was old enough to vote. "Chen's at it again," whispered Marcus Holloway, son of a Federation admiral, as he watched Sarah complete her 5th consecutive hour in the combat simulator. His perfectly styled blonde hair and unmarked uniform marked him as someone who had never known real hardship. "Doesn't she know there's no actual war going on? The hegemony signed the peace treaty 3 years ago." His friend Jennifer Walsh laughed, adjusting her family's military medals on her dress uniform. "Maybe she didn't get the memo on her little rock. Some people just can't adapt to civilized society." Sarah heard every word through the thin walls of the simulation chamber, but she didn't slow her pace. The holographic enemies kept coming. Alien forms that moved with predatory grace. Her plasma rifle whined as she fired, each shot precise and calculated. The training program was set to difficulty level 9 out of 10. Most students struggled with level 5. The truth was that Sarah knew something her classmates didn't. Her father had been a communications officer on one of the outer colony ships before his death in a mining accident. Before he died, he had shared classified intelligence with his daughter, information that would have terrified the comfortable elite of the inner worlds. The hegemony's peace treaty was nothing more than a strategic pause. Their alien forces were regrouping, building new weapons, and preparing for a war that would determine the fate of human civilization. The simulation ended with Sarah's score flashing on the display. 97% accuracy, mission completed in record time. She wiped sweat from her forehead and stepped out of the chamber to find her tactical instructor, Colonel Rivera, waiting for her. "Impressive work, Cadet Chen," the colonel said, his weathered face showing approval. "But you've been pushing yourself hard lately, even harder than usual." Sarah straightened to attention. "Sir, I believe proper preparation prevents poor performance." "At ease, Cadet. Walk with me." They moved through the academy's corridors, past other students heading to evening recreation activities. The walls displayed holographic images of famous battles and heroic figures from human military history. Sarah had memorized every one of them. "Your instructors are concerned," Colonel Rivera said quietly. "Not about your performance, mind you. You're the best tactical mind we've seen in years, but you seem to be preparing for something specific, something the rest of your class isn't." Sarah chose her words carefully. "Sir, I believe it's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared." The colonel stopped walking and turned to face her. His cybernetic left eye, a souvenir from the border conflicts, whirred as it focused. "Cadet Chen, is there something you know that we should know?" For a moment, Sarah considered telling him everything. About the encrypted messages her father had decoded before his death, about the hegemony fleet movements he had tracked in the outer systems, about the weapon signatures that didn't match any known human or alien technology. But she also knew that her father had died under suspicious circumstances shortly after discovering this information. "Sir, I simply believe that peace is temporary. History teaches us that conflict is inevitable." Colonel Rivera studied her for a long moment. "You're not wrong, Cadet, but don't let preparation become obsession. You'll need your classmates when the time comes, whether they understand that or not." That evening, Sarah sat alone in the Academy's observation deck, watching the stars wheel slowly past the massive windows. Earth hung in the distance, a blue marble that seemed impossibly fragile against the cosmic darkness. Most of her classmates were in the recreation areas, playing games or socializing. They had no idea that their comfortable world balanced on the edge of a knife. Her personal communicator chimed with an incoming message. The sender's identity was encrypted, but Sarah recognized the code. It was the same one her father had taught her years ago, a simple cipher they had used for their private communications. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the message. The timeline has accelerated. First contact in 18 months. Prepare yourself. Trust no one in official channels. Your father's sacrifice must not be in vain. Delete this message. Sarah read the words 3 times before following the instructions and wiping the message from her device. 18 months. That meant the hegemony would make their move during her final year at the academy. While her classmates prepared for graduation ceremonies and comfortable postings, she would need to be ready for war. She looked around the empty observation deck and made a decision that would change everything. She couldn't wait for official channels or proper authorization. She had to start building her own network, recruiting people who could think beyond the comfortable assumptions of peacetime. It would be dangerous, and it would require her to trust people she barely knew. But if the message was correct, humanity's survival might depend on what she could accomplish in the next 18 months. The next morning brought advanced xenobiology class, where Professor Yamamoto lectured about hegemony physiology and culture. The professor was a small, nervous man who had spent most of his career studying alien artifacts rather than living aliens. His knowledge came from textbooks and laboratory analysis, not battlefield experience. The hegemony species shows remarkable adaptation to various environments, he explained, manipulating a holographic display of an alien body. Their chitinous exoskeleton provides protection while maintaining flexibility. Their compound eyes give them nearly 360-degree vision. Fascinating creatures, really. Sarah raised her hand. Professor, what about their military capabilities? Their tactical preferences? Professor Yamamoto blinked in surprise. Well, Cadet Chen, we're not really focusing on military applications in this class. The treaty ensures peaceful coexistence. But surely understanding their physical capabilities helps us understand their potential, Sarah pressed. For instance, their exoskeleton suggests they evolved on a high-gravity world. That would affect their movement patterns, their preferred combat ranges, their vehicle design. Several classmates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Marcus Holloway rolled his eyes. Chen, do you ever think about anything besides war? Do you ever think about anything besides your next party? Sarah shot back before she could stop herself. The classroom fell silent. Professor Yamamoto cleared his throat nervously. Let's keep our discussion academic, please. Cadet Chen raises interesting points about adaptation and environment. Perhaps we could explore that topic without the military focus. After class, Sarah found herself walking alone across the Academy's central plaza. The artificial gravity and atmospheric processors created a perfect Earth-like environment, complete with carefully maintained gardens and an artificial sky that cycled through day and night. It was beautiful, peaceful, and utterly removed from the harsh realities of life in space. You made some enemies in there, a voice said behind her. Sarah turned to find David Kim, a quiet student from the Martian colonies. He was one of the few cadets who came from a working-class background, his admission to the academy earned through exceptional test scores rather than family influence. His black hair was regulation short, and his brown eyes held an intelligence that most people overlooked. I made some enemies the day I arrived, Sarah replied. At least now they're being honest about it. David fell into step beside her. You really think the peace won't last? Sarah studied his face carefully. David had always been an observer rather than a participant in class discussions. He worked hard, kept to himself, and never caused trouble. But there was something in his question that suggested he might be more perceptive than he appeared. "What do you think?" she asked instead of answering. "I think my parents didn't send me here to learn how to throw dinner parties," David said quietly. "The Martian colonies remember what happened during the first contact wars. We lost 3 cities before the treaty was signed. My grandmother lived through the siege of New Shanghai. She used to tell me stories about what the hegemony did to prisoners." Sarah felt a spark of hope. Here was someone who understood that peace was fragile, that the galaxy was a dangerous place. "What kind of stories?" David's expression darkened. "The kind that don't make it into the official history books. The kind that explain why Mars maintains its own defense fleet despite the treaty." They walked in comfortable silence for several minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Sarah made another decision that would change the course of events to come. "David, hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to form an unofficial study group focused on practical military applications rather than just theory, would you be interested?" David stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "Hypothetically?" "Hypothetically. Hypothetically, I would say that person was either very smart or very paranoid. And which do you think I am?" David smiled for the first time since she had known him. "Both, which is probably what we need." That evening, Sarah and David met in an unused storage bay in the Academy's lower levels. They had chosen the location carefully, away from the main corridors and monitoring systems. Sarah had brought her personal tablet loaded with tactical simulations, and David had somehow acquired detailed technical specifications for both human and alien military hardware. "Where did you get these?" Sarah asked, scrolling through ship schematics and weapon designs. "My uncle works for Martian Defense Industries," David explained. "He believes in being prepared for unpleasant possibilities." They spent 3 hours reviewing the information, comparing official capabilities with the reality of what they saw. The picture that emerged was deeply troubling. Human military technology had advanced significantly since the first contact wars, but so had hegemony capabilities. More importantly, the alien forces had been busy during the 3 years of peace. "Look at these energy signatures," David pointed to a series of readings from the outer system monitoring stations. "These aren't matching any known hegemony ship designs." Sarah studied the data carefully. "They're building new ships, different configurations, more powerful weapons." "It gets worse," David said, pulling up another file. "These are resource extraction reports from the asteroid belt. The hegemony has been mining rare elements at twice the rate specified in the trade agreements. Elements used in military applications." "Exactly. They're not just building new ships, they're building a lot of them." Sarah felt her father's warnings validated and her worst fears confirmed. The hegemony was preparing for war, and humanity was sleepwalking toward destruction. The comfortable peace of the inner worlds, the casual assumptions of her classmates, the focus on ceremony and tradition rather than practical combat skills, all of it was about to become lethally inadequate. "We need more people," she said finally, "but we have to be careful about who we approach." David nodded. "I might know someone. Elena Vasquez from the Luna colonies. Her family runs a shipping company that operates in the outer systems. She might have access to information we can't get through official channels." "Can we trust her?" "I think so. She's practical, she's smart, and she doesn't buy into the party line about eternal peace." Sarah made her third crucial decision of the day. "Set up a meeting, but make it look casual, like we're just studying together." As they prepared to leave the storage bay, David asked the question that had been hanging between them all evening. "Sarah, what exactly do you think is going to happen?" Sarah looked at the evidence they had compiled, thought about her father's final warnings, and considered the encrypted message from an unknown ally. I think the next 18 months are going to determine whether humanity has a future in this galaxy. And I think our classmates are going to be very surprised by how quickly their comfortable world disappears. The Academy's night cycle had begun, dimming the artificial lighting and creating the illusion of evening. Students moved through the corridors, heading to their dormitories or late-night study sessions. They laughed and joked, complained about assignments and planned weekend activities. They lived in a world where the greatest worry was passing their final exams and securing good postings after graduation. Sarah envied them their innocence, even as she prepared to shatter it. Because ready or not, the storm was coming, and she was the only one who could see the warning signs on the horizon. Elena Vasquez proved to be everything David had promised and more. The Luna-born cadet carried herself with the practical confidence of someone who had grown up in the dangerous environment of space. Her family's shipping business had given her access to information that most Academy students never saw, and her dark eyes held the same wariness that Sarah recognized in herself. Their first meeting took place in the Academy's library, surrounded by holographic displays of military history and tactical theory. To any observer, they appeared to be 3 students working on a routine assignment. In reality, they were laying the groundwork for what would become humanity's most important underground resistance movement. "The shipping manifests don't lie," Elena said quietly, her fingers dancing across a data tablet. Hegemony freight traffic has increased by 300% in the last 6 months. They're moving industrial equipment, rare minerals, and sealed containers marked as diplomatic materials. Sarah leaned closer to study the data. Diplomatic materials that require radiation shielding? Exactly. My family's pilots have been asking questions, but the hegemony trade representatives just smile and cite treaty provisions about sovereign cargo rights. David pulled up a star chart showing the outer system. If we correlate Elena's shipping data with the energy signatures from the monitoring stations, we get a clear pattern. They're building something big in the Kuiper Belt, probably multiple facilities. The 3 cadets spent the next hour analyzing the evidence, each piece of information adding to a picture that was both terrifying and undeniable. The hegemony wasn't just preparing for war, they were preparing for total conquest. The peace treaty had been nothing more than a strategic pause, allowing them to position their forces for a decisive strike. "We need to warn someone," Elena said finally. "The Colonial Defense Force, Federation Command, someone with the authority to act." Sarah shook her head. "My father tried that. He died in a mining accident 3 days after submitting his report." The weight of that statement settled over the group like a physical presence. David was the first to speak. "So what do we do? Just wait for them to attack?" "No," Sarah said, her voice carrying a determination that surprised even her. "We prepare. We build our own network, gather intelligence, and get ready for what's coming. When the attack begins, we'll be the only ones who aren't caught completely off guard." Over the following weeks, their small group grew carefully and methodically. Sarah insisted on thorough background checks and personal interviews before approaching any potential recruits. They couldn't risk infiltration or betrayal, not when humanity's survival might depend on their preparations. Michael Torres joined them after Elena vouched for his discretion and practical skills. The son of asteroid miners from the Belt colonies, he brought engineering expertise and a deep understanding of space-based operations. His scarred hands and quiet manner spoke of someone who had learned hard lessons in an unforgiving environment. Rebecca Singh came recommended by David after she demonstrated exceptional tactical thinking in their advanced combat simulations. Born on one of Jupiter's moons, she combined analytical brilliance with an intuitive understanding of three-dimensional warfare that impressed even their instructors. James Wright initially seemed like an unlikely recruit. The son of Federation diplomats, he had grown up in the comfortable halls of political power. But he also had access to classified communications and a growing suspicion that his parents' optimistic reports about hegemony intentions didn't match the reality of alien behavior in private negotiations. By mid-semester, Sarah's unofficial group had expanded to include 12 carefully selected cadets, each bringing unique skills and perspectives to their clandestine activities. They met in rotating locations, used coded communications, and maintained perfect academic performance to avoid suspicion. To their classmates and instructors, they appeared to be nothing more than studious individuals with no particular connection to each other. The reality was far different. They had established secure communication networks with contacts throughout the solar system, created detailed tactical analyses of hegemony capabilities, and begun stockpiling resources for the conflict they knew was coming. More importantly, they had started training for scenarios that weren't covered in the Academy's official curriculum. Traditional fleet engagement doctrine assumes we'll have warning, Sarah explained during one of their evening sessions in a maintenance tunnel deep within the Academy's infrastructure. We'll detect incoming forces, mobilize our fleets, and engage them in open space where our technology advantages can be maximized. But that assumes they're going to fight fair, Michael pointed out. Everything we've learned about their behavior suggests they prefer surprise attacks and overwhelming force. Rebecca manipulated a holographic display showing the solar system's defense networks. Look at our patrol patterns. They're designed for peacetime monitoring, not wartime defense. A coordinated attack could take out half our early warning systems before we even know we're under assault. Elena added shipping data to the display. And they know our patrol schedules. Hegemony trade ships have been mapping our defensive positions for 3 years under the cover of commercial operations. The implications were staggering. Humanity's military leadership was preparing for the last war, not the next one. Their strategies assumed rational behavior from an alien species that had demonstrated ruthless pragmatism during the first contact conflicts. Most critically, they were treating the peace treaty as a genuine diplomatic achievement rather than a temporary tactical pause. We need real combat experience, James said during their next meeting. Not simulations, not exercises. We need to understand how the hegemony actually fights. Sarah had been thinking the same thing. There are still border incidents in the outer colonies. Pirates, raiders, isolated conflicts that don't make the news feeds. If we could get assigned to patrol duties, I might be able to help with that, Elena said. My family has contracts with the Colonial Defense Force. They're always looking for Academy cadets to fill out crew assignments on routine patrols. David looked skeptical. Routine patrols don't involve combat. No, but they involve real ships, real weapons, and real situations, Sarah countered. We need to understand how space combat actually works, not just how the textbooks say it should work. Within a month, Elena's family connections had secured assignments for several group members on various patrol missions throughout the outer system. Sarah found herself aboard the CDF corvette Vigilant, patrolling the asteroid mining regions where her father had spent his final years. The ship's captain, Commander Walsh, was a veteran of the first contact wars who had little patience for Academy theory and even less faith in the lasting nature of peace treaties. He assigned Sarah to the tactical station during patrol sweeps, giving her real-world experience with sensor arrays, weapon systems, and threat assessment protocols. You handle that console like you've done this before, Cadet, Commander Walsh observed during their third day out from Ceres Station. I study the manuals carefully, sir, Sarah replied, keeping her attention focused on the sensor displays. Manuals are fine, but they don't teach you what it feels like when someone's shooting back at you. The commander's weathered face carried scars from the border conflicts. You've got good instincts, though, better than most Academy graduates I've seen. Sarah felt a moment of pride, followed immediately by concern. She needed to be competent enough to be useful, but not so competent that she attracted unwanted attention. The balance was delicate, and getting it wrong could expose her activities to official scrutiny. The breakthrough came during their 5th day on patrol, when the Vigilant responded to a distress call from a mining operation in the outer belt. Pirates had attacked the facility, overwhelmed its minimal defenses, and were in the process of looting valuable equipment when the corvette arrived. Sarah watched the engagement unfold with professional interest and growing alarm. The pirates used tactics that were distinctly non-human in their coordination and aggression. Their ships moved in patterns that suggested hive-mind communication, and their weapons showed technological signatures that didn't match any known human or standard alien designs. "Sir," she called from the tactical station, "I'm reading energy patterns that match hegemony specifications." Commander Walsh moved to her position and studied the displays. His expression darkened as he processed the implications. Pirates don't have access to hegemony military hardware. Unless they're not really pirates, sir. The engagement ended quickly once the Vigilant engaged. The attacking ships withdrew with military precision, taking only what they could carry and leaving no survivors among the mining facility's security force. It was professional, efficient, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. "Cadet Chen, you will not discuss what we observed here with anyone," Commander Walsh said as they headed back to Ceres Station. "Not your classmates, not your instructors, not your family." "Yes, sir. But, sir, shouldn't Fleet Command be informed about possible hegemony involvement?" The commander's laugh was bitter and humorless. "Fleet Command would explain to us how we misidentified standard radar equipment and remind us not to create diplomatic incidents over routine criminal activity. Some things are better handled through unofficial channels." Sarah understood perfectly. Commander Walsh was telling her that the official military hierarchy couldn't be trusted with information that contradicted their comfortable assumptions about peaceful coexistence. He was also suggesting that there were people working outside official channels to prepare for unpleasant possibilities. When she returned to the academy, Sarah shared her experiences with the group through their secure communication network. The picture that emerged from multiple patrol missions was consistent and deeply disturbing. Hegemony forces were active throughout the outer system, testing human responses, mapping defensive capabilities, and eliminating potential witnesses to their activities. "They're not just preparing for war," Elena concluded during their next meeting. "They're already fighting it. We're just too stupid to realize it." David had been analyzing communication intercepts from his contacts on Mars. "It's worse than that. They're using our own cooperation against us. Every joint scientific project, every cultural exchange, every trade agreement gives them more information about our capabilities and weaknesses." Michael displayed technical schematics on their portable hologram projector. "Look at this. These are the specifications for the new Colonial Defense Force frigates. The engines use hegemony-designed efficiency improvements. The navigation systems incorporate alien computational methods. The weapons control interfaces are based on joint development projects." "They've made our ships dependent on their technology," Rebecca breathed. "If they can remotely disable those systems, our entire fleet becomes useless," Sarah finished. "This isn't just military preparation. It's a systematic infiltration designed to cripple our defensive capabilities when the time comes." James had been unusually quiet during the meeting, but now he spoke with grim certainty. "My parents received new diplomatic instructions last week. The Federation is planning to propose expanded cooperation agreements with the hegemony. More joint projects, deeper technological integration, combined research facilities." "Timeline?" Sarah asked. 6 months. They want everything finalized before the anniversary of the peace treaty." Sarah felt the pieces clicking into place with horrible clarity. The hegemony wasn't planning to attack during her final year at the academy. They were planning to attack during the anniversary celebrations, when humanity's guard was completely down and their most important leaders were gathered in one place for ceremonial events. "We need to accelerate our preparations," she announced. "Whatever we're planning to do, we need to be ready to do it in 6 months." The group had grown to include nearly 30 carefully selected individuals, each recruited through personal connections and thorough vetting. They represented the best tactical minds of their generation, drawn from every major colony and military tradition in human space. More importantly, they were united by a shared understanding that official channels had been compromised and that humanity's survival might depend on their independent actions. They had established secure supply caches throughout the outer system, created communication networks that bypassed official monitoring, and developed tactical plans for scenarios that weren't covered in standard military doctrine. They had also begun recruiting allies among the Academy's younger instructors, carefully identifying individuals who shared their concerns about the hegemony's true intentions. Colonel Rivera proved to be one of their most valuable converts. The veteran instructor had been conducting his own unofficial investigation into alien activities, and Sarah's group provided him with information that confirmed his worst suspicions. In return, he gave them access to classified intelligence reports and advanced training opportunities that weren't available to normal cadets. "The Federation Intelligence Service knows something is wrong," he explained during a clandestine meeting in his office. "But they're being overruled by politicians who don't want to hear bad news. Your evidence fills in gaps we couldn't explain through official channels." "What can you tell us about official preparations?" Sarah asked. "There aren't any. Fleet Command is planning ceremonial exercises for the anniversary celebration. They want to demonstrate our peaceful intentions and our commitment to cooperation. Meanwhile, the hegemony has been conducting intensive military exercises in their home systems." The colonel activated a secure holographic display showing recent intelligence summaries. "Your analysis of their technological infiltration is correct. Our newest ships are potentially vulnerable to remote override. Our communication systems use alien-designed encryption that could be compromised. Our orbital facilities include hegemony safety systems that could be weaponized." "How long do we have?" Elena asked. "Based on their preparation timeline, I estimate 4 months before they're ready to move. The anniversary celebration would be the perfect opportunity to decapitate human leadership while simultaneously crippling our defensive capabilities. 4 months to prepare for a war that officially didn't exist against an enemy that was supposedly an ally. 4 months to save a civilization that refused to believe it was in danger. 4 months to prove that a small group of determined individuals could make a difference when faced with impossible odds." Sarah looked around at the faces of her companions, seeing the same determination that had driven her father to his dangerous investigations. They were no longer students preparing for theoretical conflicts. They were the first line of defense in a war that had already begun, whether humanity realized it or not. The attack came exactly when Sarah's group predicted it would, but with a ferocity that exceeded even their worst projections. The anniversary celebration of the peace treaty was meant to be humanity's greatest diplomatic achievement, with representatives from every major colony gathering at Terra Station for ceremonies that would demonstrate the lasting bonds between human and hegemony civilizations. Instead, it became the opening move in a war that nearly ended human civilization in its first hour. Sarah was aboard the Academy ship Endurance when the first reports reached them. The massive educational vessel had been assigned to provide honor guard duties for the celebration. Its crew of instructors and senior cadets representing the best of human military tradition. Most of the ship's complement was excited about the chance to participate in such an important historic event. Sarah and her network knew they were sailing into a trap. "All stations report ready for the anniversary ceremony," announced Captain Morrison from the bridge. The veteran officer commanded respect throughout the fleet, but his faith in diplomatic solutions had made him skeptical of intelligence reports suggesting hegemony treachery. Sarah monitored communications from her position at the tactical station, listening to routine traffic between the dozens of ships converging on Terra Station. Everything seemed normal until David's voice crackled through her personal earpiece, using their private communication frequency. "Signal intercept from the outer pickets," he whispered. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Configuration unknown. Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. Their intelligence network had predicted this moment for months, but the reality of it still hit her like a physical blow. She activated her console's emergency protocols while maintaining her official duties, sending coded warnings to their allies throughout the fleet. "Cadet Chen, is everything all right?" asked Commander Brooks, the ship's tactical officer. "Yes, sir. Just running final systems checks before we reach Terra Station." The lie came easily. Even as Sarah's mind raced through the tactical scenarios, they had prepared for this exact situation. The hegemony would target command and control first, attempting to decapitate human leadership and communication networks in a single coordinated strike. Their infiltration of human technology would allow them to disable or compromise many defensive systems. The anniversary celebration provided them with the perfect opportunity to destroy humanity's political and military leadership in one devastating attack. "Captain Morrison to all stations," the ship's intercom crackled. "We've received reports of unidentified contacts in the outer system. Fleet Command is investigating. All ships maintain course and formation." Sarah knew that Fleet Command was about to be destroyed along with Terra Station, but she couldn't say anything without revealing her network's intelligence-gathering activities. Instead, she activated the secret communication protocols she and her allies had established, sending urgent warnings to their contacts throughout human space. The first sign of the attack came as a series of energy spikes on the long-range sensors. Sarah watched in horror as Terra Station's signature disappeared from the tactical display, followed by the command signatures of 6 major fleet units. In less than 30 seconds, the hegemony had eliminated the Federation's entire senior leadership and a significant portion of its most advanced warships. "My God," breathed Commander Brooks, staring at the sensor displays. "The station, it's gone." Captain Morrison's voice carried shock and disbelief as he addressed the crew. "All hands, this is the captain. Terra Station has been destroyed by hostile action. We are now at war with the hegemony. All ships will implement emergency protocols and prepare for combat operations." Sarah was already ahead of him, activating the Endurance's emergency command systems and trying to establish communication with the surviving fleet units. The careful order of the anniversary formation had dissolved into chaos as ships struggled to understand what had happened and coordinate their responses. "Sir," Sarah called from her station, "I'm reading massive electronic interference across all standard communication frequencies. Someone is jamming our networks." "Hegemony?" Captain Morrison demanded. "Unknown, sir. But the interference patterns match specifications from our xenotechnology databases." What Sarah didn't tell him was that she had been expecting this exact tactic. The hegemony's infiltration of human communication systems allowed them to not only jam standard frequencies, but also to override security protocols on compromised ships. Within minutes, half the surviving fleet would be fighting their own technology as much as the enemy. "Elena, report," Sarah whispered into her personal communicator. "Outer patrol ships are going dark." Elena's voice crackled back. "Either destroyed or compromised. The mining platforms in the belt are under attack." "David?" "Martian defense grid is fighting off coordinated strikes. They're holding for now, but barely." The scale of the attack was staggering. The hegemony wasn't just targeting Terra Station or the anniversary celebration. They were simultaneously striking every major human installation throughout the solar system, using detailed intelligence gathered during 3 years of supposed peaceful cooperation. "Michael, what's your status?" "Jupiter orbital platforms are under siege. The defense platforms are firing on each other. I think their control systems have been compromised." Sarah felt her worst fears confirmed. The hegemony wasn't just attacking with conventional forces. They were using their technological infiltration to turn humanity's own defenses against them. Ships, orbital platforms, communication networks. Even life support systems that incorporated alien technology were all potential weapons in enemy hands. "Captain," she called out, making a decision that would change everything. "I recommend we shut down all systems that incorporate hegemony technology. They may be using their access to compromise our capabilities." Captain Morrison turned to stare at her. "Cadet, that would disable half our systems. Our navigation, our communications, our weapons control." "Sir, I believe they're counting on us to keep those systems online. It's the only way they could achieve this level of coordination and surprise." For a moment, the bridge fell silent, except for the sounds of combat alerts and damage reports. Captain Morrison was an experienced officer, but nothing in his training had prepared him for the possibility that human technology itself might be compromised. Commander Brooks spoke first. "Sir, if Cadet Chen is right, we're fighting with one hand tied behind our backs. If she's wrong, we're about to cripple ourselves." "What do you think, Cadet?" Captain Morrison asked Sarah directly. Sarah knew this was the moment that would define not just her future, but possibly the future of human civilization. Everything her group had worked for, all their preparations and intelligence gathering, came down to this single decision. "Sir, I think the hegemony has been planning this attack for years. They used the peace treaty to position themselves for maximum advantage. Every cooperative project, every technology exchange, every joint venture has been preparation for this moment. If we keep fighting the war they expect us to fight, we're going to lose." Captain Morrison studied her face for a long moment. Seeing something in her expression that convinced him she knew more than she was saying. "Do it. Shut down all alien-derived systems. Commander Brooks, switch to manual control for all critical functions." The Endurance shuddered as its advanced systems went offline, falling back to older, purely human technology. The ship became slower, less efficient, and much less sophisticated. But it also became immune to the electronic warfare that was crippling other human vessels throughout the system. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy signatures approaching from the outer system," Sarah reported from her now manual sensor station. "Configuration suggests a major hegemony battle fleet." Through her private network, Sarah coordinated with her allies throughout the scattered human forces. Their months of preparation were finally bearing fruit as carefully positioned allies began implementing the emergency protocols they had developed for exactly this scenario. "Rebecca here." Her voice crackled through the secure channel. "Luna Defense Grid is falling back to prepared positions. We're using the contingency plans." James reporting from the diplomatic ship Concord. "Most of the delegation is dead, but we've secured critical intelligence data and we're making for the rendezvous point." Their network was functioning exactly as designed, providing coordination and intelligence sharing that the official command structure couldn't match. But Sarah knew it wouldn't be enough to simply survive the opening attack. They had to find a way to strike back. And that meant taking risks that no military academy had ever prepared them for. "Captain," she said, her voice carrying new authority born from months of careful preparation, "I request permission to implement unconventional tactical protocols." "What kind of protocols, Cadet?" "The kind that assume our enemy knows everything about our standard operating procedures and has planned accordingly. We need to do things they won't expect using capabilities they don't know we have." Captain Morrison looked around his bridge, seeing his regular crew struggling with manual controls and obsolete equipment, while Sarah seemed to move with practiced efficiency despite the technological limitations. "Explain." Sarah activated a secure data port she had secretly installed in her console months earlier, uploading tactical plans that her network had developed through their clandestine activities. "Sir, we've been preparing for this possibility. Small unit tactics, asymmetric warfare, strike and fade operations using ships and personnel they don't know about." "We?" "A group of cadets who believed the peace wouldn't last. We've been gathering intelligence and preparing contingency plans for months." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Sarah was essentially confessing to conducting unsanctioned intelligence operations while still a student at the academy. Under normal circumstances, she would face court-martial and imprisonment. But these weren't normal circumstances. "Show me," Captain Morrison said simply. Sarah's plans were brilliant in their simplicity. Instead of trying to match the hegemony's technological advantages or fight the conventional battles they were prepared for, her network would conduct guerrilla operations using modified civilian ships, hidden supply caches, and tactics based on human adaptability rather than superior firepower. "The hegemony expects us to mass our forces and fight major fleet engagements," she explained, as holographic displays showed her proposed operations. "They've prepared for that. They haven't prepared for small units operating independently with no centralized command structure to compromise or disrupt. You want to fragment our forces? I want to make ourselves ungovernable. Every ship that survives becomes an independent command. Every crew becomes a cell in a resistance network. We don't try to hold territory or protect fixed installations. We become ghosts, hitting them where they don't expect and disappearing before they can respond." Captain Morrison studied the plans with growing amazement. "Cadet, this is the most sophisticated unconventional warfare doctrine I've ever seen. Where did you learn this?" "From history, sir. From studying every successful resistance movement humanity has ever produced. The hegemony is larger, more advanced, and better prepared than we are. But they're also rigid, hierarchical, and dependent on centralized control. Those are vulnerabilities we can exploit." As if to prove her point, reports began filtering in from throughout the solar system. Human forces that tried to fight conventional battles were being systematically destroyed. But small units that had broken away from standard formations and implemented independent operations were having unexpected success. "Elena to all units," came the call over their private network. "Hit and run on hegemony supply convoy successful. Destroyed 3 transports and withdrew without casualties." David here. "Martian asymmetric units have eliminated hegemony command post on Phobos. Enemy forces in Sector 7 are operating without coordination." The pattern repeated across dozens of engagements. Sarah's network was proving that humanity could fight and win, but only if they abandoned everything they thought they knew about warfare and embraced the chaos and adaptability that made them uniquely human. "Captain," Sarah said, "I have a proposal. Let me take a small volunteer force and implement these tactics on a larger scale. Give us one of the escort ships and a crew of people who understand what we're trying to accomplish." "Cadet, you're talking about independent command authority. You're still a student." "Sir, with respect, the Academy doesn't exist anymore. Terra Station is gone, Fleet Command is destroyed, and the chain of command has been shattered. What matters now is results, not rank." Captain Morrison looked around his bridge, seeing his crew waiting for his decision. The Endurance was a powerful ship, but it was also a large target that would eventually attract overwhelming enemy attention. Sarah's proposal offered a chance to accomplish more with less risk. "Who do you want for your crew?" "Volunteers from my network who understand unconventional operations. People who can think independently and adapt quickly to changing situations." Within hours, Sarah found herself in command of the destroyer, Defiant, leading a crew of 30 volunteers drawn from her Academy network and sympathetic regular crew members. They had abandoned standard uniforms and identification, becoming ghosts in the system they had sworn to protect. Their first mission was a strike against a hegemony logistics facility hidden in the asteroid belt. Intelligence from Elena's family shipping network had identified it as a critical supply depot supporting alien operations throughout the inner system. Destroying it wouldn't win the war, but it would prove that humanity was still capable of fighting back. "All stations report ready," came the calls from throughout the ship as they approached their target. These weren't the polished responses of Academy graduates anymore. They were the grim confirmations of people who knew they were probably going to die, but were determined to make their deaths count. "Sarah," David's voice crackled through the communication system, "long-range sensors show minimal enemy presence. Either it's lightly defended or it's a trap." "Could be both," Sarah replied. "Stay alert and be ready to run if this goes wrong." The attack succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. The hegemony had indeed defended the facility lightly, expecting that any human attack would come from conventional forces using standard tactics. Sarah's unconventional approach caught them completely off guard, allowing the Defiant to destroy the entire complex before enemy reinforcements could arrive. But more importantly, the success demonstrated something that would change the entire course of the war. Humanity didn't have to fight the hegemony on their terms. They could create their own terms, using their unique advantages to offset alien technological superiority. "This is only the beginning," Sarah told her crew as they withdrew from their first successful mission. "We're going to teach the hegemony that humans are more dangerous than they ever imagined." Over the following months, Sarah's network expanded into a full-scale resistance movement that operated throughout human space. They struck at enemy supply lines, rescued survivors from destroyed colonies, and gathered intelligence that helped the scattered remnants of official human forces coordinate their own operations. Most importantly, they proved that the war was far from over. The hegemony had won the first battle through deception and superior preparation, but they had underestimated humanity's capacity for adaptation, innovation, and sheer, stubborn determination. Sarah Chen had endured the conflict that her classmates never saw coming. Now she would help ensure that humanity endured the storm that followed, and that when the final victory came, it would be won by human courage, human ingenuity, and human refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds. The comfortable world of the Academy was gone forever, replaced by the harsh reality of a galaxy where survival meant never stopping to rest and never assuming that peace was more than a temporary pause between conflicts. But from that harsh reality, a new kind of humanity would emerge, stronger and more capable than any alien species could imagine.